starting with presentation, discussion, and possible action relating to receiving the annual audit reports and annual comprehensive financial report for the fiscal year ended September 30th, 2024. And the sponsor is Michael DeHaven.
Michael DeHaven, Assistant Finance Director. So tonight we're going to have a presentation and kind of discussion on the fiscal year 24 annual financial or annual comprehensive financial report. You'll hear us refer to it as ACFR also, and our external audit report. So I know we have some new council members, so I was just kind of going to go over what the ACFR is. So it all kind of starts with the council adopted budget, and then we have our regular actual financial transactions that occur throughout the year, revenue and expenditures. Then our financial reporting group goes in and does presentation transactions related to GAAP and GASB requirements, and all that together comes out with the annual comprehensive financial report, or ACFR, and those basically are financial statements for the city. Now those financial statements provide transparency into the financial position of the city. It also provides some key metrics for financial measure, and there's some statistics in there in the back of it about city operations. I will go over some of the kind of highlights of the government-wide. So when I say government-wide, that includes both our governmental activities and our enterprise funds, the utilities. And so our overall net position, and that's going to be kind of like your net worth, it's going to be our book net worth for the city, is $970,975,012. That was an increase of approximately $70 million for the year. Now that is broken down into specific pieces of it. There's an unrestricted net position. That's kind of basically what we can use to operate the city on a day-to-day basis. That amounts to $314,841,338, an increase of about $22 million. Now we have a restricted net position, so this would be items that are restricted in nature, which can be used for. Example would be your hot taxes, our investment in Bavisma, stuff like that that you have a specific reason for. So that amount is $98,348,007. That increased $16.3 million for the year. And then our net investment in capital, so this would be the book value of all the stuff we own as a city. This would be our roads, our buildings, our vehicles, everything that's a capital asset. That is $557,785,667, and that increased $31.6 million for the year. Down at the bottom of the slide, you can see some of the key drivers for the increase in our unrestricted net position was our investment income, permit fees. We had some grant receipts and utility revenues and sale of business park land. Go over again on the government-wide some of our liabilities. We talk about these kind of the last few years. So our net pension liability, it decreased $16.6 million for the year, so it's $36.8 million right now. That pension liability is 91% funded, and which is a really good level for municipalities and cities. You can see down at the bottom of the graph, we talked about this again. This is a 3-year rolling of that liability when we shifted focus trying to manage that liability and pay it down. And we had that little blip where we had some great investment earnings, and then it's kind of popped back up because of the losses that the market had in 22, but we did gain some earnings back in 23. Again, pension is valued on a calendar basis versus a fiscal year basis, so that is valued as of December 31st of 2023. Compensated absences, I talked about these last year. These are our vacation for employees. Last year, we were required to start valuing the sick leave that the city has, or employees had accrued. So that value right now is $12.3 million. It increased about 1.7. That value will increase every year because it is based upon our payroll and our payroll cost, unless we have a lot of people start using vacation and sick leave during the year. The net OPEB liability. So OPEB, that is our retiree insurance. That liability is only $377,697. That was a decrease of $104,929. That liability is 95% funded. This is the liability that we actually have a trust that we have funds in that funds that liability, and we try to keep that liability between 95 to 98% funded. So every year after we present to the council our financial statements, we supply these to what's called the Government Finance Officers Association. They go through, review them to make sure that we have the presentations correctly for the required kind of GAAP and GASB stuff, to make sure that they're readable. Everything is kind of in line with their standards. And so we received for our fiscal year 23 their Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. We've had a good track record on this, so we've received this award for about 30 plus years. So it's just kind of continually going. And we'll submit the 24 reports after we present to you guys tonight. So our first year, or our auditors, we changed this year to Weaver and Tidwell. John DeBurrow is the partner in charge. He's here tonight. So the work was completed on the external audit on February 21st of this year. It included audit and review of the comprehensive financial report and also our single audit for our federal and state grants. Weaver presented their findings to the audit committee on March 6th, and the audit committee accepted both the ACFR and the audit report. So tonight it's just a presentation and discussion. There's no formal action by council because the reports had already been accepted by the audit committee. And I'm going to turn it over to Mr. DeBurrow to do his presentation.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. As Michael mentioned, my name is John DeBurrow. I'm the audit partner with Weaver, and I served as the engagement partner in this year's audit. And I'd like to thank the city for hiring us as your audit firm. As Michael mentioned, this was our first year conducting the city's audit. I have a brief presentation that I'd like to go over with you. As Michael mentioned, we met with the audit committee last Thursday and went into depth on both the audit results and some of the financial highlights from this year. And joining me as part of the management of the audit was Brittany Drew. I apologize she can't be with us this evening. She was responsible for the day-to-day field work. I'd like to go through some of our auditors' communications. We went through these in more detail again last week, but just to give you some of the high-level information from that presentation. The next two slides go through the audit results, and I'm happy to report that we've issued an unmodified opinion on the city's financial statements. That just means it's a clean opinion. It means that we feel that the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects in accordance with GAAP. So that's a great thing. In conjunction with our audit of the city's financial statements, we also issue a report on internal control over financial reporting and compliance. And I'm happy to report that there were no material weaknesses, excuse me, no significant deficiencies in internal control, and no issues of any non-compliance that were material to the financial statements. This slide right here is very similar to the previous one, but this has to do with the federal financial assistance audit, or the single audit. We issued an unmodified opinion as well on the city's federal financial assistance, and that means that we feel that the city complied in all material respects with all the direct and material compliance requirements of the two major federal programs that had to be audited this year, which are at the bottom of this screen. The first one was the CDBG, or Community Development Block Grant Section 108 Loan Guarantee Program, and the second program was the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds, or ARPA program. So there were no material weaknesses in internal controls over compliance, no instances of significant deficiencies in internal control over compliance, and no other issues that had to be reported as a result of our testing of the major programs. So it was great news all around, and I'd like to thank Mary Ellen, Jeff, Michael, Anita, and the rest of the finance department for all of their cooperation and hard work in making this a very good audit. We performed our audit in accordance with several standards, generally accepted auditing standards, generally accepted government auditing standards, and then the uniform guidance as part of the single audit, and also performed testing of various compliance with contracts and grant agreements. And we went through these last week in more details, but as part of our required communications, there are several areas that we have to communicate to those charged with governance. We went through the various significant risks that we're required to identify as part of our planning process, and how how we tested to make sure that those risks were at a low level and did not result in any kind of control deficiencies. We went through our responsibilities under the various accounting standards, the government auditing standards, generally accepted government auditing standards, and the uniform guidance. We also noted that there were no new GASB pronouncements that had to be implemented this year that had any significant effect on the city's financial statements. There were really no difficulties in conducting our audit, no disagreements over any application of accounting standards. And in the area of audit adjustments, I'm happy to report that there were no significant audit adjustments that needed to be made as a result of our audit work to arrive at the numbers in the financial statements. That, in a nutshell, is our audit results. Again, I'd like to thank you for your time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Do any of the council members have questions?
I have several, but for staff as well as.
Okay. Any others? Okay. We'll let Councilman Yancey go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. DeBurrow, for the concise and accurate presentation. Nothing leapt out at you in the process of auditing our financials as any significant concerns?
No, there really weren't any significant concerns. Any suggestions for improving things here and there were very minor, but nothing of any consequence.
And you've been in this business for about 20 years?
Yeah, almost 25 years now.
How many cities do you think you've participated in their audit process?
I've probably been part of auditing between 50 and 100 cities.
Wow. And how do we rank in your mind's eye over the prism of your career compared to other cities?
With only 1 year to experience, I would say in the upper echelon. You have a very talented team here in the finance department, and they do excellent work.
Thank you. I think so too. The rest of my questions are for staff, Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. I have a couple questions. We were given a really detailed, comprehensive review. Can I highlight or can I get an explanation on a certain aspect of that report, if that's possible?
Sure.
I don't know if you have it in front of you, but on page 87, there was a East Medical District that kind of is, the way it was diagrammed, is kind of over there by Midtown. And in your projections, it mentioned that that over the next 20 years, you were projecting development of $283 million. You see that on page 87? That would yield almost $31 million in taxes. I'm just curious what your projection of that increase was in that East District, East Medical District. You see what I'm referring to?
Yeah, that was all part of the original TERS when it was set up.
So your projection is 20 years back from 2015, I think that's when it was, rather than 20 years based off today, correct? Okay, so theory we have, in your opinion, 10 more years to reach that 283 million which you were projecting in that area.
When the original TERS was set up, yes.
And you base that projection off of the plans that in 2015?
Yes, whenever that TERS was developed and everything was designed, that's when the projections were made, yes.
So currently, in that report, we're not even close to that, if I'm not mistaken.
You can see that basically the net taxable value in that table below is 168 million for fiscal year 24.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so not quite there, but on the way. Thank you. I have one more question, but I'll keep it for next.
Thank you, Mayor. Michael DeHaven, I like how you do business.
Yes,
I'm a
sir.
put you through some mental gymnastics here. Some level setting stuff for me. On page 37 of the comprehensive financial report, government activities versus business type activities. That's government versus enterprise.
Yes.
Okay. On internal balance, there's a credit and a debit situation, the amount of $15,802,768 that appear. That's an interfund transfer?
That is.
Is that 2 interfund transfers or 1?
It's the it's the transfer from the utility funds, or basically the enterprise funds as a whole, to the governmental funds.
Oh, okay. So sometimes it could be a one-time transfer, sometimes it could be multiple, and this is capturing the total
Yes.
for the reporting period.
At the end of the fiscal year.
Great deal. And land and construction in progress, $110 million. That's undeveloped land and/or land in the city's inventory that construction is in progress.
So that is actually land as a separate bucket and construction in progress. So that would be streets that are not completed, or anything that we have under construction that's not in service, that gets lumped onto the balance sheet because it's not depreciating yet.
And then the $832,467,000 right below it, that would be existing improved city land, buildings, parks,
Yes, that is correct.
everything.
Yep.
Okay, and then jump down, again on page 37, statement of financial condition, non-current portion of long-term debt, $458 million. That's basically our bond indebtedness outside of the next year.
That is correct. That would, and that number actually includes your premiums and stuff like that. It lumps everything together.
Okay, they're all together. Okay, and then I'm almost there. Page 40. Due in more than 1 year, $278 million. Middle of the page, long-term liabilities. Due within 1 year, $23,727,000. That is bonds that we will retire, or that we did retire in the last fiscal year, correct? Middle of the page, long-term liabilities are not due and payable in the current period, therefore are not reported in the government funds balance sheet.
Yeah, so this is basically your reconciliation from modified accrual to full accrual. So that would show your basically kind of your budgetary basis to where when we have to do all the those GAAP and GASB entries. So this would be that portion of long-term liabilities that is due in more than 1 year that gets onto the balance sheet that's not on the governmental statement balance sheets and modified accrual. That was a lot of voodoo witchcraft accounting talk, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't bad, though. It was a good line. The $278 million due in more than 1 year, that's through 2040, is that correct?
Yeah, that would be through whatever time frame that liability is due for. So if we have bonds that are due through 43, it would be those also.
We don't have anything, Jeff, do we, outside of 2040? Or
Yeah, well, so the bonds we issued in fiscal year '24, those are 20-year bonds, so that's going to be maturity in 2043.
okay.
Yep.
And those would be the outside term that we'd be looking at. That if we didn't issue another nickel of debt
That would be the last.
in 2043,
Yep.
we're debt-free.
Yes.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor. Good report. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Michael, one quick question. If you could go back to your first slide, I just want to reference that slide. I think you indicated that our statement of financial position increased $70 million. There's also a note on page 20 that was combined with an 82 plus million, or 80, yeah, almost 82 million last year. So you're saying that the city net assets gained 150 million over the last 2 years?
Yes, that is correct.
And you broke it down. Thank you so much for doing that, because I had kind of looked at that as well. Do you see the same ratio in 23 that you did in '24?
Yeah, it's very similar. I think the net, restricted net position was around 9 million in that year. The unrestricted net position, was, going to be in here. And we had a larger net investment in capital increase last year in '23 versus '24. But yeah, that is pretty similar every year. It's about that amount.
So the city is in good shape.
Yes, the city is financially in good shape.
Yes, and if you want to see the historical trend, there are statistical tables at the back of the
Yes,
report that will
yes.
show the various categories of net position for both governmental activities and business-type activities. You can see the growth.
Wonderful. Very good, very good. Thank you. That's all I have.
Any other questions? I appreciate the report, and it's good to feel affirmed that we're in good shape. Thank you very much. Do we need any action on this item?
No action, just required to present it to you. Again, we had action through the audit committee. And just want to thank our fiscal folks and everybody across the organization. For those who are or aren't paying attention right now, this is a big deal, and it's not something that you just get together when someone comes in to audit you. It has to do with the way that you go about business, and that's these people doing this all the time. And would also point out, as I've been through several cycles of these, we change auditors periodically, and that's for good reason too, right? Different set of eyes. And so appreciate our new auditors, and also just point it out because it's not uncommon when you switch auditors for them to find certain things that they'd like you to correct just because there's differences in it. So to have a clean opinion like this is, a really big deal. So appreciate everybody's work on that, and take the day off, and we'll start on next year's tomorrow after that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we're moving on to item 8.2.